47 people held their breath at the same moment. Al Pacino had just done the impossible. He was sabotaging his own case, and there was a reason for it. But that wasn't the shocking part. The courtroom was a cathedral of judgment. Dark wood panels climbed the walls like silent witnesses. Rain hammered against the windows. Al Pacino sat perfectly still. His hands rested on the table, fingers interlaced. Sharp, calculating, dangerous. His lawyer, Marcus Bellamy, stood at the podium. Tall, polished, expensive. His voice filled the room like honey poured over broken glass. Your Honor, my client is a victim of circumstance. Pacino's jaw tightened. Because 15 minutes ago, something had happened that no one in this room knew about. Pacino had stood outside the courtroom. Bellamy had approached, briefcase in hand, victory smile on his face. We're going to win this, Bellamy had said. How? Pacino had asked, but Bellamy had leaned closer. The witness, James Crawford. His testimony can't be verified. Pacino's eyes had narrowed. Why not? Because he's unavailable. Unavailable? Bellamy's smile had widened. Permanently. The word had hung in the air like a blade. Pacino had grabbed Bellamy's collar, slammed him against the marble wall. The impact had echoed through the empty hallway. What did you do? Pacino's voice had been ice. Bellamy hadn't flinched. I did what you paid me to do. I won. I paid you to defend me, not to kill people. I didn't kill anyone. Bellamy had straightened his tie. James Crawford had a heart attack 3 days ago. I simply made sure the records disappeared before anyone connected the dots. Pacino's fist had connected with the wall next to Bellamy's head. Plaster had cracked. Bellamy's eyes had gone wide. You used a dead man to manufacture doubt. And it's going to work. Bellamy had pushed past him. Now get in that courtroom and let me do my job. But something in Pacino had already broken. Now, in the present moment, the prosecutor Sarah Chen sat across the aisle. Young, sharp, hungry for justice. She'd spent 6 months building this case, and she was about to lose. Bellamy continued. The evidence is circumstantial at best. The witness is unreliable. Pacino watched the jury. They were already shifting, ready to acquit. But here's what they didn't know. Pacino was guilty. He'd taken the money, falsified the documents, done everything they accused him of. He'd been ready to face it, ready to take his punishment, until Bellamy had decided to win by corrupting the system itself. And that Pacino couldn't allow. The thing about Al Pacino, the thing people never understood, was that he didn't fear consequences. He feared becoming someone he didn't recognize in the mirror. Bellamy droned on. I move to dismiss all charges. Stop! The word exploded like a gunshot. Bellamy froze. His mouth hung open. The courtroom went silent except for the rain. Pacino stood up slowly. His chair scraped against the floor. The sound was deafening, but what he did next shocked everyone. He walked toward Bellamy, each step measured, deliberate. When he reached the podium, he didn't look at the lawyer. He looked at the stack of fabricated documents. Their eyes met. In that moment, Bellamy saw something that made his hand shake. Not anger, not rage, disappointment. Pacino grabbed the documents, held them for one long moment. Then he ripped them in half. The tearing sound filled the courtroom like a scream. Papers fell like snow. Bellamy stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. The crash shattered the silence. Your Honor, Pacino said, his voice steady, I need to say something. Judge Margaret Torres leaned forward. Mr. Pacino, I strongly advise. My lawyer is a liar. The room erupted, whispers cascaded. Bellamy's face went white. Al, sit down, Bellamy hissed. You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. Pacino turned to face the jury. I did it. I took the money. I falsified the documents. Everything they said I did it. Sarah Chen's pen clattered to her desk. Bellamy grabbed Pacino's arm. You're destroying yourself! Pacino jerked his arm free. The force made Bellamy stagger backward, nearly falling. No, Pacino said quietly. I'm saving myself. But that wasn't the whole story. Judge Torres slammed her gavel. Mr. Pacino, do you understand what you're saying? I understand perfectly. Pacino looked at Bellamy. But, Your Honor, there's something else you need to know. The room held its breath. My lawyer didn't just make a legal error. He committed a crime. Bellamy's briefcase fell from his hands. It hit the floor with a thud that echoed. What are you talking about? Judge Torres demanded. Pacino's voice never wavered. The witness you're claiming is unreliable. James Crawford? He's dead. Has been for 3 days. My lawyer paid someone to hide the death certificate, to create false documentation, to manufacture reasonable doubt. Sarah Chen shot to her feet. Your Honor. I have proof, Pacino said. He reached into his jacket. Bellamy lunged. Don't you dare! But Pacino was faster. He pulled out a manila envelope and threw it onto the judge's bench. It skidded across the polished wood. The courtroom was chaos now. Guards moved forward. Bellamy backed toward the exit. Mr. Bellamy, Judge Torres's voice cut through the noise. Sit down. Now. Bellamy froze. But here's the part no one expected. Sarah Chen opened the envelope. Her hands trembled as she read. When she looked up, tears were streaming down her face. Your Honor, she said quietly, everything Mr. Pacino said is true. These are copies of the original death certificate. Communications between Mr. Bellamy and a clerk at the records office. Wire transfers. She looked at Pacino. How did you get these? Pacino smiled. A tired, sad smile. I hired someone last night. A private investigator. Because I needed to know if I was working with a lawyer or a criminal. He turned to Bellamy. You taught me something, Marcus. You taught me that winning isn't everything. Because if you win by destroying the system, you haven't won. You've just proven you were never strong enough to play by the rules. Bellamy's legs gave out. He collapsed into a chair. The thing they don't tell you about integrity is that it's expensive. It costs you your freedom sometimes, your reputation, your future. But the thing they also don't tell you is that losing it costs more. Judge Torres looked at the evidence, then at Pacino, then at Bellamy. Bailiff, she said quietly, take Mr. Bellamy into custody. The handcuffs came out, but they weren't for Pacino. Bellamy's hands were cuffed behind his back. He looked at Pacino with pure hatred. You destroyed me, Bellamy spat. No, Pacino said. You destroyed yourself. I just refused to let you take me with you. As the guards led Bellamy away, something unexpected happened. The courtroom erupted in applause. Judge Torres slammed her gavel. Order! Order in this court! But the applause continued for another 5 seconds, because everyone in that room had just witnessed something rare. They'd witnessed someone choose truth over freedom. Sarah Chen approached Pacino. Why did you do it? Pacino looked out the window. Rain was still falling. Because I looked in the mirror last night, he said, and I didn't like who was looking back. I could live with being guilty, but I couldn't live with being a coward. Judge Torres cleared her throat. Mr. Pacino, I'm going to need to continue this case, given these new circumstances. Your Honor, Pacino interrupted, I still plead guilty to my crimes, not to his. She studied him for a long moment. I see. 3 days passed before the sentencing hearing. The atmosphere was different now, quieter, more somber. Sarah Chen stood and did something unprecedented. Your Honor, I'm recommending a reduced sentence, 3 years instead of 15. The judge raised an eyebrow. On what grounds? On the grounds that Mr. Pacino exposed corruption at great personal cost, that he chose integrity when he could have chosen freedom. That matters. Judge Torres nodded slowly. Mr. Pacino, do you have anything to say before I pass sentence? Pacino stood. Just this. I spent most of my life believing that power meant control, that winning meant survival. But I was wrong. He paused. Real power is knowing who you are when everything is taken away. Real winning is being able to sleep at night. The gavel came down. 3 years. 3 years later, Pacino walked out of prison. The city looked different. Or maybe he did. Sarah Chen was waiting outside. She'd quit the prosecutor's office, started her own practice, focused on cases where truth mattered more than victory. I wanted to thank you, she said. For what? For reminding me why I became a lawyer. They stood in the rain. Water ran down their faces. You know what the hardest part was? Pacino asked. What? Realizing I'd been lying to myself for years, telling myself that winning was everything, that the ends justified the means. He looked at her. But they don't. They never did. And the moment I accepted that, I was finally free. Sarah smiled. So what now? Pacino pulled his coat tighter. Now, I figure out what it means to live like this, to choose truth over comfort. He started walking, then stopped, turned back. You know what I learned? What? That the strongest thing you can do isn't defeating your enemies. It's defeating the part of yourself that wants to become them. And with that, he disappeared into the New York rain. Just another man on a crowded street, but different now. Free. Not because he'd escaped punishment, but because he'd finally escaped himself. The question isn't whether you'll face a choice between right and easy. You will. Everyone does. The question is, when that moment comes, will you have the courage to rip the papers in half? 6 months after his release, Pacino sat in a small cafe in Brooklyn. Steam rose from his coffee. Through the window, he watched people rush past. Businessmen, students, dreamers. A young man approached his table. Excuse me, are you Al Pacino? Pacino looked up. The kid couldn't have been more than 25. Nervous eyes, trembling hands. Depends on who's asking. I was in that courtroom, the young man said. 3 years ago. I was interning for the DA's office. He paused. What you did that day, it changed my life. Pacino gestured to the empty chair. The kid sat. I was about to quit law school, the young man continued. I thought the whole system was corrupt, that there was no point in fighting. His voice cracked. But then I saw you stand up, saw you choose truth when everyone expected you to lie. He looked down at his hands. I'm graduating next month, top of my class, and it's because you showed me that one person can still make a difference. Pacino was quiet for a long moment. Then he leaned forward. You want to know the real secret? He said softly. It's not about being fearless. It's about being afraid and doing it anyway. The young man nodded, stood, extended his hand. Pacino shook it. As the kid walked away, Pacino returned to his coffee. Outside, the rain had stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds, casting long shadows across the street. And for the first time in years, Al Pacino smiled. Not because he'd won, but because he'd finally learned what winning really meant